Don't you just hate it when you watch someone treat service staff like they're invisible? It was almost 10 p.m. when Lena Rivera placed the receipt on the table at booth 9. Her legs ached from 10 straight hours of movement. Her apron smelled faintly of garlic and dish soap, and she could feel her body humming with exhaustion that went deeper than muscle. Still, her voice was calm, warm, professional. "Let me know if there's anything else I can get you, sir." There were 6 of them, young, loud, dressed like money, careless with everything that didn't serve them. But only one had Lena's full attention. The man at the head of the table. He hadn't looked at her once all night. Not really. But she knew his name. Ethan Caldwell. He had the kind of arrogant posture that only generations of wealth could teach. A cream sweater draped over his shoulders like a scarf. A watch that probably cost more than her annual tuition, and the distinct air of someone who's never had to carry anything heavier than his own ego. He'd spent the last 2 hours commanding the table like a bored prince, casually dismantling the menu with custom demands and inappropriate confidence. "I'll take the filet," he'd said, snapping the menu shut without eye contact. "But I want it cooked in the butter you use for the sea bass, and the mashed potatoes from the duck dish, but with the mushrooms from the short rib special. You can handle that, can't you?" He hadn't meant it as a question. Lena had smiled and nodded. "Of course, sir," then turned away, lips tight, rage low and quiet in her chest. It was like that the entire meal. Drinks sent back because they were breathing wrong. A dessert plate rejected because the chocolate was too glossy. Laughter like glass shattering in her ears. Stories of yachts, ski trips, private islands, and startup investments that failed upwards. At one point, Ethan rolled his eyes dramatically and said, "My dad says I need to learn fiscal discipline. He cut my discretionary budget to 200 grand a month. Can you believe that? What am I supposed to do, cook?" Lena didn't flinch. But inside, something shifted. She thought of her little brother, Mateo, and how his sneakers had holes in the soles. She thought of her rusted Toyota Civic and the check engine light that never turned off. She thought of the overdue electric bill folded in her pocket. She swallowed it all. Like always, by the end of the night, the bill came to $947.12. A 20% tip would have meant nearly $190, enough to pay the utility bill and still leave something for groceries. Lena brought the check to Ethan with the smallest flicker of hope. Maybe he'd surprise her. He'd in single quotes. He picked up the pen, smirked at her just a flick of his lips, cruel and lazy, and with one firm stroke crossed a line through the tip. Field. Then he wrote, in large capital letters, 0. And just beneath it, he added, "Get a real job." He didn't say thank you. He didn't look back. He brushed past her like she was an object, not a person, his shoulder grazing hers just enough to make a statement. Lena stood still for a long moment, the small leather folio clutched in her hands. The word 0 glared back at her, ink bleeding into paper like a wound that wouldn't clot. It wasn't just the money, though losing it felt like a punch to the ribs. It was the message. "You don't matter." She blinked fast, trying not to cry. Not here. Not in front of anyone. By the time she clocked out and left the gilded Lillian, over-decorated, for luxury restaurant, where even the spoons tried to look like gold, her hands were shaking. The city lights blurred through the tears she refused to let fall. She walked home in silence, every footstep echoing Ethan Caldwell's smirk in her mind. Their apartment was dark when she let herself in. Mateo had fallen asleep on the couch with a textbook open on his chest, surrounded by empty ramen cups and crumpled math worksheets. She kissed his forehead and sat at their small kitchen table. The receipt was still in her pocket. She laid it out in front of her like a piece of evidence. Around it, she spread the stack of bills: rent, school fees, the overdue notice from the electric company. She stared at the number, 0. She ran the math again in her head. Even if she picked up 2 extra shifts, it wouldn't close the gap. Her phone buzzed. It was her friend Carla from school, asking if Lena had time to join the study group for next week's exam. Lena typed a quick excuse, working double shifts, and put the phone face down. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it came with dreams of menus written in languages she didn't understand, of fancy men with sharper pens than hearts, of trying to fill a cracked bucket while someone kept poking new holes in it. The next morning, Lena tied her apron tighter than usual and forced her smile into place. The brunch crowd at the Gilded Lily was slower, quieter, and easier to handle. She moved like clockwork, pouring mimosas and stacking plates, until the sound started, a low, rhythmic thump-thump that grew louder by the second. It wasn't music. It wasn't traffic. It was something heavier, deeper. People began drifting to the windows. Lena followed, curiosity pushing through fatigue. Outside, in the adjacent city park, a matte black helicopter descended onto the grass. Like a bird of prey, its sleek body reflected the morning sun. A stylized CC logo gleamed on its side. Phones came out. Patrons whispered. The side door of the helicopter opened, and out stepped a tall man in a charcoal suit, hair silver, presence undeniable. He walked toward the Gilded Lily with the calm authority of someone who never had to wait for anything in his life. The manager, Brian, practically sprinted to the door. "Sir, do you have a reservation?" The man didn't answer. He scanned the room once, his eyes sharp and focused. Then he walked straight toward Lena. The entire restaurant went silent. "Are you Lena Rivera?" he asked. Lena nodded slowly, heart pounding. "My name is Charles Caldwell," he said. "My son Ethan was seated here last night. I believe we need to talk." He gestured to the empty booth Ethan had occupied. "May we?" Charles Caldwell didn't sit like a man making small talk. He sat like a man making decisions. Lena slid into the booth across from him, suddenly hyper-aware of her stained apron and trembling fingers. Her co-workers and customers were still frozen in place, watching as if the entire restaurant had become a stage. Charles leaned forward, resting one hand on the table. The other reached into the inside pocket of his tailored jacket. "When I was your age," he said, voice smooth but weighted, "I worked 2 jobs. I hauled garbage from construction sites at dawn and washed dishes until midnight. I remember the kind of tired that seeps into your bones. I remember what it feels like when people look straight through you, as if you were part of the furniture." He placed a small audio recorder gently on the table between them and clicked a button. Ethan's voice spilled out of the device. Unmistakable, even in miniature. "He cut my discretionary to $200,000 a month. Can you believe that? I mean, how am I supposed to live, Cook?" Lena flinched. That line again. Then came her own voice, crisp and professional, asking if she could take his plate. And then silence. The part where Ethan scrawled his insult across the receipt. Charles clicked the recorder off. That, he said, his jaw tightening, was the final straw. His eyes didn't waver. "I've been worried about Ethan for some time. His spending, his associations, his detachment from reality, so I hired someone to follow him, not to spy, but to see the truth. Lena swallowed, unsure where this was going. Her hands were clenched in her lap under the table. What he did to you wasn't just rude, Charles continued. It was a moral failure, a failure I bear responsibility for. Then he did something Lena never expected. He pulled a check from his briefcase and slid it across the table. Her name was typed neatly at the top. The amount, $10,000. This, he said, is for the tip you were denied, and for the humiliation you endured. Lena stared at the check, her vision blurred. For a moment, $10,000. It was 2 semesters of tuition. It was 6 months of rent. It was everything she needed and never thought she'd have. She looked back at him. Sir, ... this is ... more than generous. Charles shook his head. It's not enough, because a check doesn't fix the real problem. He clasped his hands and studied her. The scrutiny wasn't cruel, it was strategic, calculated, but also, somehow, human. That's why I have a proposal, a rather unconventional one. Lena felt her pulse quicken. I want to hire you, he said. She blinked. To do ... what? To be Ethan's executive assistant. The words landed like a stone in water. The ripples hit her heart, then her mind, then her throat. Charles went on. I've seen your background, top of your nursing class, working full-time, raising your brother alone. No red flags, no nonsense. That's rare. What Ethan needs more than anything is someone like you. Lena's voice was quiet, dry in her mouth. You want me to work for the man who humiliated me? Yes, Charles said, not flinching. Because I don't want to punish him. I want to re-educate him. And I believe you, Miss Rivera, might be the only one capable of doing that. He leaned forward, lowering his voice just slightly. I want him to see the world he's never had to live in. I want him to look at someone like you every day, someone with grit, intelligence, and dignity, and realize what he's missing, what he's become. Lena felt dizzy. Her world, so carefully balanced on double shifts and bus schedules, was spinning off its axis. What's the catch? She asked quietly. No catch, Charles replied. Only terms. He slid a folder toward her this time. Inside was a salary offer, more money than she'd dreamed of, full coverage of her remaining education, and a separate trust fund for Mateo's future college tuition. Lena's breath caught. In her throat, she looked down at the papers, then at the older man across from her, whose jaw was set with a mix of desperation and determination. He'll hate me, she said. Charles nodded. Absolutely. He'll despise you. He'll see you as a spy, a gold digger, a walking reprimand. It will be, I imagine, one of the hardest jobs you've ever done. He paused. But something tells me you've already done harder. Lena didn't answer. Her thoughts had already drifted to Mateo. 2 quiet nights in the dark, calculating. What bills could wait? 2 textbooks with coffee stains and unpaid lab fees. 2 moments of silent fear she never shared with anyone. And now, this. She didn't say yes. Not right away. But she didn't say no either. 2 days later, Lena Rivera stood in the marble lobby of Caldwell Holdings. The skyscraper above her glittered with the names of companies she'd only ever seen on envelopes or in business sections, of newspapers she never bought. She wore her one formal outfit, a dark blazer borrowed from Carla and black flats that pinched her toes. She felt like an imposter, a shadow, until the elevator opened. Ethan was already there, flanked by 2 aides. He looked up and stopped walking when he saw her. His face changed. First confusion, then disbelief, then rage. "You have got to be kidding me," Ethan said, his voice low and sharp. Charles stood next to Lena, calm as ever. "Ethan," he said firmly, "this is your new executive assistant. Her employment begins today." Ethan turned on his father, practically shaking. "You hired her," he spat. "After everything, what is this? Some twisted test? Punishment? You found the one person in the entire city I can't stand, and you made her my assistant." "She's not your punishment," Charles said evenly. "She's your mirror, and your last chance." Ethan turned to Lena then, eyes cold as ice. "How much?" he asked. "What did he pay you for your pity party? Must have been a good deal." "The terms of her employment are not your concern," Charles snapped. "Your only concern is to do your job, and if I don't—" Charles raised an eyebrow. "Then the venture capital division you've been begging to lead gets reassigned." Immediately, Lena watched Ethan swallow the threat. She saw him weigh the damage, the pride, the defeat. He turned sharply without another word and stepped into the elevator. The message was clear. The war had begun. Lena's new office wasn't really an office. It was a glass-walled enclosure bolted to the outside of Ethan's sleek corner suite like an afterthought. A fishbowl with Wi-Fi. From her desk, she had a perfect view of him. From his pet, he couldn't look up without seeing her. The first few days were quiet. Then came the emails, short-clipped, intentionally cold. Subject: coffee message. "It's 2 degrees too cold. Try again." Subject: notes message. "Transcribe this 3-hour call. I need it in an hour." No typos. Subject: task message. "Find a new dog walker." Last one had needy energy. Lena completed every task with surgical precision. No reaction, no resentment in her tone. Only results. The coffee arrived at exactly 88 degrees Celsius. Oat milk, no foam. The dog walker had a PhD in animal behavior. The transcript was error-free and formatted to company-style guidelines. Ethan didn't thank her. He didn't even acknowledge her, but he kept the coffee and called the dog walker by the end of the first week. He gave her an assignment that made her pause. Subject: urgent message. I need a 50-page market analysis. Luxury, artisanal toothpicks. I'm serious. Due Friday. Lena read the message 3 times before exhaling slowly. It was a trap, a test, a joke. But it was also an opportunity. She stayed late 3 nights, digging into trends in oral fixation accessories, historic consumer rituals, sustainable wood production, and branding strategies. On Friday morning, she placed the bound report on his desk without a word. Ethan opened it, flipped a few pages, then looked up at her for the first time. Just looked, not smirking, not mocking, just watching. Then he snapped the binder shut and pushed it aside. "Don't be late on Monday," he said flatly. "We've got a presentation downtown." Lena nodded and walked out. He didn't say it, but she knew. He hadn't expected her to deliver that afternoon. She was on the phone scheduling Ethan's next meeting when she overheard shouting through the wall. His voice, loud and raw, filtered through the glass like a blade. "No, that's not what we agreed on. Listen, I don't care if the venue is double booked. Then fix it or I'll cancel the whole damn thing." Then came silence, and a sharp thud as something hit the wall inside his office. She waited 5 minutes, then knocked softly and stepped inside. He didn't look at her. His hands were on his desk, palms down, chest heaving. "I heard," Lena said simply, "about the gala vendor. I don't need a babysitter." Ethan muttered. She walked in anyway and placed a folder in front of him. "I contacted 3 alternatives. Firm A can meet the budget with a simpler setup. Firm B costs more but gets better press coverage. Firm C is a startup willing to take a loss just to put Caldwell Holdings on their client list." He glanced at the folder, then at her. His expression flickered anger, surprise, confusion, then something softer, something almost like respect. "Almost, you scheduled calls?" He asked. "They're already on your calendar." He didn't thank her, just grabbed the folder and sat down. For a moment, neither of them moved. The tension between them had shifted, still brittle, but changing shape. The next day, Lena noticed something strange. He didn't email her once. He spoke to her in person, just a sentence here and there, but direct, human. Later that week, she reorganized his calendar from chaos into a machine. Meetings were color-coded, alerts synced to his watch, and overbookings eliminated. He never commented, but she saw the way he stopped checking his phone every 5 minutes. He was adjusting, so was she. At night, Lena still attended her nursing classes, but now she wasn't rushing through traffic or nodding off at her desk. Her mind was clearer, her focus sharper. There was food in the fridge. Matteo had new shoes and a laptop that actually worked. Still, she was careful. She never let Ethan see her smile. She didn't trust the thaw, but cracks were forming. One night, working late, she stepped into Ethan's office to drop off updated financial reports. His jacket was slung over his chair, tie undone, shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked tired. Real. A photo on a side table caught her eye. A boy, maybe 10, laughing beside a woman with bright eyes and a protective arm around his shoulder. They both looked happy. Whole. Lena recognized the woman from online articles. Ethan's mother, deceased cancer. Years ago, she lingered a moment longer than she should have. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked from the doorway. His voice wasn't harsh, just ... Guarded, tidying. Lena replied quickly. "I was just finishing up." His eyes flicked to the table where the photo sat, then back to her. His expression shifted defensive at first, then unreadable. "Just leave the reports," he said. Turning away, she placed the file gently on his desk and stepped out, heart racing. Back at her own desk, she sat for a long time without touching the keyboard. That boy in the photo didn't look anything like the man she worked for now, but for a second she'd seen something behind his eyes. Grief, maybe loneliness, lost. She wondered if that boy was still in there somewhere, waiting or buried. His name was Victor Lang, Senior Vice President. 20 years at Caldwell Holdings, always impeccably dressed, always early, and always smiling like he already knew your secret. He first appeared outside Ethan's office one Thursday morning, leaning casually in the doorway while Lena updated the weekly strategy file. "Big things happening in here," Victor said, voice smooth like old jazz. "I hear the prince has some ambitious plans." Ethan looked up, annoyed. "What do you want, Victor?" "I'm here to support," he said innocently. "Your father thinks you're ready for more responsibility." "I agree, but even kings need advisors, right?" Lena didn't like him. The way he glanced at her too, warm, too familiar, like he was testing her reactions. She'd served enough high rollers to recognize fake charm dressed as mentorship. Later that day, he found her by the coffee machine. "You're handling him well," Victor said, sipping his espresso. "Charles gave you quite the impossible assignment, didn't he?" Lena didn't answer. She didn't have to. "If you ever need perspective," he added, "my door is open." He winked and walked away. It wasn't a gesture of kindness. It was a warning disguised as a compliment. The following week, everything changed. Ethan called Lena into his office, eyes gleaming, an excitement in his voice she hadn't heard before. "I've found it," he said, throwing a glossy prospectus onto the desk in front of her. "This is it. This is our play." Lena picked up the folder and scanned the title, Lena Rivera, Biotech. The cover boasted miracle therapies, life extension breakthroughs, and charts with exponential growth. It was polished, flashy, and immediately suspicious. "I thought we were moving on. Biotech," she said, referencing the solar startup Charles had been pushing for weeks. Ethan waved her off. "That's my father's project. Safe, small, boring. This is different. We get in now, we define the future." "Where did you hear about them?" she asked. "Victor brought it to me," he replied. "Said it's under the radar. Nobody's moving yet. We'll beat everyone to the punch." Lena flipped to the financials. Numbers jumped out at her to clean. "Too perfect. Something's off," she said, frowning. "Their cash flow is inconsistent. The science reads like a buzzword salad. And this lead researcher, Dr. Finch, his doctorate is from a now-defunct online university." "It's cutting edge," Ethan snapped. "Of course, it's not traditional. It's vague," Lena countered. "There's no peer-reviewed data, no independent trials, and their CFO used to work for a firm that folded after a fraud investigation." Ethan stood, jaw tightening. "You're doing it again," he said, voice rising. "Playing watchdog, my father's shadow. This isn't about data, it's about control. You don't want me to succeed unless it's on his terms." "That's not true. You're a nurse, Lena," he said coldly. "You think like a secretary. This is venture capital. It's risk. It's instinct." The insult landed sharp, hard. It wasn't about her skills. It was about reminding her of her place. Lena stared at him, wounded but unmoved. "I'm not here to protect your ego," she said. "I'm here to do the job you refuse to take seriously." "Then do it," Ethan barked. "Get me a full due. Diligence report by Monday. I want this ready for the board." She turned and walked out without another word, but her pulse thundered in her ears. She couldn't sleep that night. Something about Lena gnawed at her. It smelled like rot wrapped in gold foil. She didn't believe in gut feelings over data, but this time they agreed, so she went deeper. She started with what she could access: internal files, public records, phone logs. No direct connections between Victor Lang and Lena showed up, but something tugged at her memory, an offhand mention from Ethan. "Victor brought it to me." She changed her search. Less direct, more creative. Instead of chasing Victor, she chased his circle. One recurring name stood out on his recent corporate phone records: David Chen. Dozens of calls, all outside company business. Too many for coincidence. Lena pulled Chun's profile. He was a disgraced analyst fired from a rival firm 3 years earlier for insider trading. Still nothing illegal until she dug deeper. David Chen's wife, sister of Leonova's chief financial officer. There it was, the link that Victor had used a proxy. He was feeding Ethan poisoned ambition through a clean-looking channel. The entire pitch had been a setup. Lena stared at the screen for a long moment, her hands trembling. If Ethan moved forward with the acquisition, it would implode publicly and catastrophically. Millions lost, reputation destroyed, his position gone, and Victor. He'd be right there to pick up the pieces. She printed the call logs, the company ties, and compiled her own report. She wrote until sunrise. When she finished, the folder was thick with proof. Now came the hard part. Ethan wouldn't believe her. Not after their last conversation. Not when his pride was inflamed and Victor's poison still tasted like power. She waited outside his office until he arrived, folder clutched to her chest. "Ethan, you can't go into that board meeting," she said quickly. "This acquisition is a trap. I have proof." "Victor, I'm done listening to this," he interrupted. "This is pathetic. You want to be right. You want to prove I'm just a spoiled idiot who needs his dad's assistant to hold his hand. That's not what this is. No. This is you overstepping. Again. You don't understand this world, Lena. Stick to what you're good at." She held out the folder. "Just read it. That's all I'm asking." He stepped back like she'd tried to hand him poison. "Don't. Follow me into that room," he said coldly. "You've done enough." Then he turned and walked away. The door to the boardroom closed behind him with a final, brutal click. Lena stood there, frozen, rejection burning like acid in her chest. She had done everything she could. She had built the case, gathered the facts, tried to save him Evan after everything. She could walk away now. Her contract was solid, her tuition secured, Mateo's future safe, but she didn't move. Her hand found her phone. There was one number left to call, the one Charles Caldwell had given her the day he offered her the job. For emergencies only, he'd said. This felt like one. She dialed. It rang once. Then, Charles Caldwell speaking. She didn't hesitate. "Mr. Caldwell, it's Lena. Ethan is about to push through the Lena acquisition. It's a fraud. Victor Lang set him up. I have the proof. You have to stop it. Please." There was a pause. Then Charles's voice, transformed, turned to steel. "Where are you right now?" "Outside the boardroom," she said. "Stay there. Don't move." The line went dead. Lena put the phone down. Then she waited. The silence outside the boardroom was thick. Lena stood alone in the marble hallway, folder in hand, eyes fixed on the closed doors where Ethan was about to destroy his career in front of the company's most powerful stakeholders. Her heart beat a slow, steady rhythm of dread. The seconds dragged. Then came the sound, that deep, rhythmic thump, impossibly loud, impossibly close. It was a sound she recognized now, a mechanical heartbeat, the arrival of something unstoppable. She turned to the window just in time to see the matte black Caldwell helicopter hovering beside the building, its rotors whipping the air into a frenzy, holding position like a predator just outside reach. The elevator, DINGED. Out stepped Charles Caldwell. He wasn't in a suit this time. His silver hair was slightly wind-blown, his button-down shirt open at the collar. He looked like a man who had left his weekend, halfway through, and didn't care who knew it. He marched straight toward her. "The folder," he said, without stopping. She handed it over. Charles opened it as he walked. His eyes scanned the pages, with razor-speed phone logs, financial trails, names, dates. He stopped at the last page. His jaw clenched once. "Victor," he muttered then, without a word. He threw open the doors to the boardroom. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Inside, every head turned. Ethan was standing at the head of the table, contract in hand, pen poised to sign. His eyes locked onto his father, and then onto Lena standing just behind him. His face went white. "Father, what are you?" Charles didn't stop. He walked directly to the table and tossed the folder onto the polished surface. Pages spilled across the boardroom like spilled ink. "Before you sign that," he said calmly, "read this." Ethan looked down. He picked up the first page, eyes scanning faster now, each line drawing the color further from his face. He flipped to the next. Then the next dot, Victor Lang, seated 3 chairs down, shifted slightly in his seat. Charles turned. "Something wrong, Victor?" Victor smiled, just barely. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Charles." "Don't," Charles said sharply. "You made calls to a disbarred analyst with ties to Lena Rivera's CFO, repeatedly, for weeks, and then conveniently handed the acquisition to my son, while staying just far enough away to deny responsibility." Victor's mask cracked. "That's circumstantial," he said quietly. "You have no it's enough," Charles interrupted. "And you know it." He turned back to Ethan. "You were about to gamble your name, your future on a lie, because you wanted to prove something to me, or to yourself. I don't even know anymore." Ethan didn't respond. He just looked at Lena, and he saw her, really saw her. Not the waitress from the Gilded Lily, not the assistant he'd resented, not the spy he'd accused. He saw the woman who had tried over and over to help him, even when he made it unbearable. "You knew," he said quietly. Lena nodded once. "I tried to warn you." His eyes dropped to the table. The pen slipped from his hand. "I was so sure," he whispered. "You were so arrogant," Charles corrected, though his voice had softened now. "And you were being used." Victor stood, slowly. "I don't think." "This room is the place for accusations," he said. "Let's have legal handle." "You won't need legal," Charles said, waving to a security officer standing at the back of the room. "You'll need clearance. Turn in your badge now." Victor's mouth opened, then closed. He knew it was over. Security escorted him out without ceremony. The board members sat in stunned silence. When the doors finally closed behind him, Charles sat down heavily in one of the chairs and looked at his son. Ethan looked like a building halfway collapsed. "I was trying to win," he said. "Trying to matter." "You already mattered," Charles replied. "You just never believed it." For a long time, no one spoke. When the room cleared, only 3 people remained: Ethan, Charles, Lena. Charles finally stood. "I need some air," he said. He looked at Lena once, as if to say thank you, but DIDN single quotes. Then he left them alone. Ethan stood up and turned to her. "I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to," Lena said, voice level. "No, I do," he insisted. "I treated you like you were nothing, in the restaurant, in the office, and still you saved me from myself." She met his eyes. There was no trace of triumph in hers, only exhaustion. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you help me after everything?" Lena hesitated, then answered quietly, "Because no one deserves to have their ambition used against them. Not even you." He stared at her. It was the first time he didn't have a comeback, and maybe the first time he didn't want one. Victor. Lang was gone by the end of the hour. Security walked him out through the executive lobby while staff pretended not to stare. No press release was issued. No internal memo sent. His office door, once always slightly ajar, was locked by noon. By evening, his name had already been removed from the company directory. It didn't matter how many years he'd spent climbing the tower. Charles Caldwell had built the tower, and he'd decided Victor wouldn't have the view anymore. But inside that now quiet boardroom, the real fallout was only beginning. Ethan still hadn't moved. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, eyes on the skyline, below the city. Went on as if nothing had happened. Cars moving, lights blinking, the world spinning forward, behind him. Lena sat at the conference table, the damning folder still open between them. It didn't matter that the evidence had worked. The damage had already struck deeper. He turned to her, and for the first time there was nothing defensive in his posture. No smirk, no fire, just a tired young man whose armor had finally cracked under its own weight. "I was ready to sign it," he said. "I was ready to bet the company on that deal." Lena didn't respond. He wasn't really talking to her yet. All because I wanted to prove to my father that I could do something big, something loud, something that didn't look like charity. He exhaled and sat across from her. "He didn't even yell," Ethan said. "I thought he would. After all the speeches, after all the warnings, I thought he'd finally lose it. But he just ... looked tired." Lena nodded. "Because that's what disappointment sounds like." Ethan winced. He rubbed his temples and looked down at the papers. "Again, Victor played me," he said. "He fed my ego and watched me sink. He counted on it," Lena said. "And you made it easy." Her tone wasn't cruel, just honest. Ethan didn't fight it. He nodded slowly, then looked up at her. "I owe you more than an apology," he said. Lena leaned back, arms crossed. "Start with that then." "I'm sorry," he said. "For everything. For the restaurant. For the zero. For the way I treated you. You didn't deserve any of it." She studied him carefully. She'd heard a lot of apologies in her life. Most of them were words without weight. This one felt different, real, raw, costly. She nodded. "Just once. Apology accepted." They sat in silence for a while after that. Outside the boardroom, the normal rhythm of the office had resumed. Phones ringing, people walking, deals being made. But inside, something else was happening. A shift, a beginning. 2 days later, Lena received a message from Charles's office, formal, polite, requesting her presence on the 55th floor at noon. When she arrived, Charles was seated behind a desk that overlooked the city like a throne room. But he wasn't posturing. He was thoughtful, fingers steepled, a folder already waiting in front. "Of him, Miss Rivera," he said, standing. "Please, sit." She did. "You've fulfilled your contract," he said. "The funds for your education have been transferred into a secured trust. The same for your brother's college. No strings, no loopholes." Lena blinked. That alone would have been enough. But Charles wasn't finished. "We'd be foolish too." "Let you walk away." He pushed the folder toward her. Inside was a job offer, not as Ethan's assistant, as director of the Caldwell Foundation, a new philanthropic division dedicated to overseeing the company's social impact, non-profit partnerships, and education initiatives. "The budget is healthy," Charles said. "The freedom is real, and the impact could be substantial. I believe you'd build something meaningful." Lena didn't answer immediately. She needed a moment to breathe. "This is a lot." "It's earned," he replied, "and long overdue." A soft knock interrupted them. The door opened slightly. It was Ethan. I hope I'm not interrupting, he said. Charles nodded. Come in. Ethan stepped inside, holding something in his hand. It was small, familiar, a gold-plated receipt folio. He handed it to Lena. I thought you might want this back, he said. Inside was the receipt, the original one, the one with the 0. Only this time, a new number was written over it. In the tip field, $10,000, and below it, instead of get a real job, there was something else. Thank you for seeing what I couldn't. Lena smiled. Not because of the money, not even because of the apology, but because for the first time, it didn't feel like pity. It felt like respect. Ethan turned to Charles. She should take the job, he said. She's the only person in this building I actually trust. Charles raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Then Ethan turned back to Lena. I'd like the chance to work with you, he said. For real this time. Not above you, not against you. As partners. She nodded. She didn't need more words. She already knew her answer. A few months later, the Gilded Lily looked the same. Same fake gold trim. Same velvet menus. Same overconfident. Laughter rising from leather booths. But booth 9 had a new pair of regulars. Lena Rivera and Ethan Caldwell sat across from each other, not as adversaries, not even as boss and employee, but as collaborators. They were reviewing proposals for a new community center in East Riverton, one of the city's poorest districts. Ethan had helped secure the zoning. Lena had chosen the partners. The project would break ground in 2 months. Their server arrived young, clearly nervous. Ethan smiled. Hey, I'm Ethan, and this is Lena. Thanks for taking care of us today. The server blinked, surprised, then nodded. As she walked away, Lena leaned forward. Since when do you remember server names? Since I stopped thinking I was the most important person in the room. Ethan said. He meant it. When the check came, Ethan didn't hesitate. He left a tip so generous it made the server do a double take. No speech, no show, just quiet decency. Lena watched him. He caught her eye. What? She shook her head, smiling. Nothing. The boy from the photo, the one she'd seen laughing with his mother, was still in there somewhere. And now, finally, he wasn't hiding anymore. Lena didn't sign the new contract right away. She carried the folder home and laid it on her kitchen table next to Mateo's algebra homework and a week-old grocery receipt. The envelope was heavy, not just with paper, but with the weight of everything it symbolized. Financial freedom, respect, power, purpose. It should have felt like a dream come true. Instead, she felt unsettled. Her life had always been simple in structure, even when it was hard. Wake up early, work 2 shifts, study when she could, pay what she could. Repeat. There had never been options, only obligations. And now there was room to choose. The next morning, she sat alone on a park bench near the community college, folder in her lap, watching the sun rise through a line of trees. The air smelled like wet pavement and blooming grass. For the first time in years, her thoughts weren't racing toward the next emergency. She could finish nursing school. She could disappear from the corporate tower and never see Ethan Caldwell again. She could finally live the quiet, stable life she had fought so hard for. But a voice inside her whispered something else. What if that wasn't enough? That afternoon, she stopped by the construction site in East Riverton, the future community center. She wore jeans and a hoodie, no badge, no clipboard, no agenda, just curiosity. The foreman recognized her. You're the one who pushed for "This project, right?" he said. "Your name's been floating around all week." She smiled. "I'm no one. I'm just ... helping out." "Well," the foreman said, wiping his hands on his vest, "whoever you are, it's good work. People here are paying attention." On the way out, Lena passed a mural in progress spray paint and brushed outlines on cracked brick. It showed a pair of hands planting a tree. The caption beneath it read, "Asterisk, asterisk, plant something, leave something." Asterisk, asterisk, that night, she sat with Matteo at their tiny dining table. He was finishing a practice essay for a college prep course she'd never imagined. He could afford. "You okay?" he asked, glancing up. "You've been quiet." Lena tapped the folder next to her. "They offered me a new job," she said. "Permanent, big title, bigger responsibility." Matteo raised an eyebrow. "More than what you're doing now?" "Way more." He hesitated. "Are you still going to be a nurse?" That was the question, wasn't it? "I'm not sure," she admitted. Matteo leaned back in his chair. "I mean, ... you'd be amazing at either one," she smiled. "I want to help people," she said. "I always have. But this, it's a different kind of help. It's bigger, maybe. It's just not what I pictured." Matteo nodded, then said something simple, something that broke her hesitation wide open. "You don't have to live in survival mode forever, Lena." He didn't mean it as a challenge, just a truth, quiet, clean. The next morning, she walked into Caldwell Holdings, not as an assistant, but as a director. Her new office was high up, across the hall from Charles's, with a view that stretched beyond the skyline and into neighborhoods where real change was needed. The nameplate on the glass read, "L. Rivera, Director. Caldwell Foundation, asterisk, asterisk." On her first day, there was a stack of proposal files waiting for review. Education grants, housing partnerships, a food security pilot, and one folder left intentionally. At the top, a handwritten note was paperclipped to it. "Asterisk, asterisk, this one matters." EC, asterisk, asterisk. Lena opened the file. It was a program for after-school mental health support in underserved districts, the kind of program no one ever funded. Too messy, too slow to scale, too human. She smiled. Later that afternoon, Ethan stopped by. He knocked, but only after entering. "Still learning boundaries? Settling in?" he asked. "Mostly," Lena said. "There's a lot to do. That's why we need you here," he said. "You see things the rest of us don't." He hovered for a second too long, like he wanted to say something more. Then he turned at the door. He paused. "I'm not good at this," he said. "But I'm trying, and I want to be better. For real, not because my father says so, because you made me see what I was missing." Lena didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked at her desk at the applications, the numbers, the human stories waiting to be read. Then she looked at him. "Try showing up on time," she said. "That's a start." He grinned. "Deal." He left, and for the first time in this whole tangled story, Lena felt something close to peace. It wasn't just about forgiveness. It wasn't just about money, or redemption, or even justice. It was about choice, and she had finally made hers. The Gilded Lily hadn't changed much. The same velvet booths, the same dim lighting pretending to be elegant, the same cutlery that looked like gold but weighed like steel. The illusion was intact, but Lena Rivera had changed. She walked through the front doors in heels that didn't pinch, wearing a tailored coat and a quiet confidence that didn't need to prove itself. The hostess greeted her like a regular booth. 9, the hostess asked. Lena nodded. Perfect. Ethan was already there, flipping through a folder, a mug of black coffee in front of him. He looked up when she approached. Running late, he said with a grin. You were early, that doesn't count. He slid the folder toward her. Quarterly projections for the Community Tech Fund. I flagged the ones that need your eyes. She took the folder but didn't open it. Instead, she glanced around the restaurant. There was a table nearby, loud with a group of young executives. She watched a server navigate their orders with practiced patience. Ethan followed her gaze. I used to sit just like that, he said. Worse, she replied. You didn't even say thank you, he smirked. I say it now. You do, Lena agreed. And you mean it. The server arrived, a young man, maybe 20, nervous but trying to look sharp. He filled their glasses and took their orders. Quickly, eyes darting from face to face, Ethan waited until he turned to leave. Hey, he said, smiling. Thanks for taking care of us today. I know it's a madhouse in here. The server blinked, surprised. Of course, thanks. When he left, Lena raised an eyebrow. Who are you? She asked. And what have you done with Ethan Caldwell? Still. Me, he said. Just less of the old version. You've evolved. No, he said. I woke up. You did that. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. They reviewed proposals between bites grants for urban gardens, free public, Wi-Fi in underserved neighborhoods, microloans for women entrepreneurs. The kind of work that started small but mattered. Deeply. Lena signed off on 2 of them before setting the folder aside. How's your dad? She asked. Ethan shrugged. Still powerful, still stubborn, but different now. Different how we talk, he said. Not just about business. About Mum. About how hard it was after she died. About how we both tried to protect each other by shutting down. Lena looked at him, surprised by the honesty in his tone. I never hated him. Ethan said. I just wanted to feel seen. Lena nodded. Everyone does. They sat in silence for a few beats. Then Ethan leaned forward, voice quieter. Do you ever regret it? Regret what? Not walking away when I told you to. Not letting me fail. She thought about it. The late nights, the impossible assignments, the condescension, the moment she'd held the folder outside the boardroom, knowing she could walk away and be done. I don't regret it, she said. But I won't. Lit would have been easier. Why didn't you? Because I saw something in you, she said simply, even when you couldn't. Ethan held her gaze for a moment, then looked down. Thank you, he said again. This time so quietly it felt private. The check came. Ethan didn't even glance at the total. He signed, left a tip big enough to make a difference, and slid the folio across the table. Lena caught the server's glance when he picked it up. That same stunned pause she had once made herself. Every time you do that, she said, I hope it feels a little like redemption. It does, Ethan replied. But mostly, it feels like respect. They left the restaurant together, walking slowly through the early evening air. The city around them buzzed with its usual noise-honking laughter. Music from open windows, but everything between them was calm. Outside, Lena stopped and looked up at the restaurant's glowing sign. Funny how it all started with one word. She said. Ethan nodded. 0. No, she corrected. It started when I decided that word wouldn't define me. He looked at her, hands in his coat pockets. I think it defined me, he said. And then you erased it. Lena smiled. We both rewrote it. A breeze passed between them. Somewhere behind the skyline, the lights of the new community center were coming on for the very first time. A room that had once been dark was now full of students, teachers. Possibility. Lena didn't know what would come next, only that it was hers to shape. She turned to Ethan. Let's get back to work. He nodded. After you. They walked off down the street, not as enemies, not even as symbols of opposite worlds anymore, but as two people who had once crossed by accident and stayed by choice. And that's how a single number on a receipt, 0 meant to diminish, became the start of everything. Because sometimes the people we dismiss have the most to teach us, and the richest stories begin when no one is watching.